Martin Luther King, and we're going to be talking about Dr. King in a way that can sound critical, but it's not critical of him. It is not me saying, that I don't think Dr. King was ever right about anything. It's going to end up being us sort of asking ourselves, what was his model for Black liberation optimal? Did it do what it was supposed to do? How do we honor this extraordinary man, but yet still at the same time tell the truth in terms of where things actually are in the community, where we want them to be, how we can evolve, and how we can actually take things to the next level. And I start off that conversation by saying that Dr. King was a very young man. And I think a lot of people forget about that. He started his civil rights activism. I want to believe he was 25, 26 years old. And he died way too young. I don't think he was 40 yet. And I think that speaks to the fact that maybe some of his ideas were not completely evolved. And I think he was headed in our direction, actually. Let me see here. Let me just double check to see exactly how old he was, so I can make sure I get it right. I want to say right, maybe 39 or 38 or 39, but I could be wrong. Let me see. 39. There we go. He's 39 years old. So 39, when you're 52, 39 seems like a baby. But then again, you're not a baby, you're a grown man. And he was definitely a grown man. He was a great man. But I think also when we talk about this great man, I think that we can really honor and respect him, while at the same time really say, okay, what would he have continued to do if he was alive? I don't know what this sounds like, but I know that when I remember when I met Reverend Jesse Jackson and we were talking about economics and everything, and I remember he gave me probably what I consider to be a great compliment. He said if Dr. King was listening to you, he'd be quoting you all over the place. And I said, maybe that's what we're doing, all of us, not just me, but all of us. Maybe that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're like a relay race. We're supposed to take the baton, and we're not supposed to run over the same ground that the previous person ran, right? He ran the baton the first 100 meters. We're not supposed to turn around and run the same 100 meters, right? When the first leg, if you watch the men in the world championships and the women in the world championships, when Sha'Carri Richardson ran, when Sha'Carri ran, she ran on the fourth leg, but another amazing woman, I forgot her name, Gabby Thomas, ran the third leg. So when Gabby came around the curve on the third leg and handed the baton to Sha'Carri, where they got the gold medal, Sha'Carri was supposed to run further than Gabby. She wasn't supposed to turn around and run the same track as Gabby, right? So Gabby ran the curve so that Sha'Carri did not have to run the curve. And her job was to not finish the race, but to get the baton to Sha'Carri, where Sha'Carri brought it home and they got the gold medal. So to use that analogy, I think, our job is not to simply reiterate and worship and just only analyze and only celebrate and only repeat what our folks did during the civil rights movement, right? That's not progress. Maybe they ran the second or third leg, and it's our job to run the next leg. Maybe it's our job to run the baton further than they ran. Give me a guess if you get what I'm saying. Because I go through that process to start the conversation carefully, because I ain't trying to get out here and try to beef with Martin Luther King. You don't beef with a guy who's dead, and you shouldn't be beefing anyway. I don't know about y'all, but the internet's full of Black men beefing and fighting and discrediting each other and attacking each other and gossiping about each other. I'm not participating in any of that. In fact, actually, for those of you that are sick of that nonsense on the internet, the immaturity, we actually have a Black-owned social media platform. It's called Black Enough. It's owned by us. We trademarked that name, BLAGGENUF. That's BLAGGENUF.com. And it's invitation only. You have to be accepted. When you get to the page, you cannot come right in because we do not want the wrong energy there. But those of you that are B1, those of you that are in the space, you can join for free. You can go to blackenough.com. Somebody type that in the chat, please. Blackenough.com, and you can just answer a few questions. And what happens is every day our team goes through and looks at the questions, and we admit maybe 5 to 10 people per day. Okay. So if you apply, the other thing is once you're accepted, you can invite your friends. Only invite people that are into positivity, prosperity, and productivity, not the negative stuff, not the crazy stuff, not the attack and all this other stuff. That doesn't benefit anybody. So that's a space we created specifically for that reason. We tried to build a social media platform from scratch with engineers literally designing everything from the ground up. And it's spelled Blaggenuf. Thank you, Miss Heard. It's Blaggenuf. So we tried to build a platform from the ground up. We spent $100,000. I kid you not, trying to build it from the ground up. Didn't work. Every week the engineers would send us something. It was clunky. It was problematic. So we found a platform that we could create on top of something called Mighty Networks. Now it's not perfect, right? Because it's not 100% ours in that regard, but it works. It's functional. And I'm not going back to Facebook because Facebook, as we were talking to Dr. Christina Parks today, Dr. Christina Parks is actually going to join us in the Black Business School. And she actually is doing a whole training on health secrets and things like that, kind of getting you ready for the next pandemic, because we know that there's another one around the corner. We know that there's another emergency around the corner. As I said, there's an election year coming. Last time we had the chaos, it was 2020, 2024. Do you think we'll have more chaos? She said, yes. They're already talking about mask mandates and potential shutdowns and all that. So Dr. Parks is a trusted doctor. She has a PhD in cellular and molecular biology from the University of Michigan. And she's joining us in the Black Business School. And so if you want to learn more about what she's going to be doing in the Black Business School, just go to blackhealthsecrets.com. That's blackhealthsecrets.com. So we're always developing things that will help you achieve your goals. So the Black Enough platform, I like that because it gives you a space where you can have complete freedom of speech. Again, as long as we're respectful to each other, we're not going to censor anything that people talk about, things like that. And then also blackhealthsecrets.com is where Dr. Parks will be working with you on health issues and cellular level health and dealing with the pandemic stuff, everything. If you don't remember, she did testimony before the Michigan House of Representatives, and it went viral because she was one of the people that talked about the effect of the pandemic and what Big Pharma was doing and what the government was doing, how it was affecting Black people. Now she's clearly she wasn't in favor of the jab, but at the All Black National Convention, what we did with Dr. Parks, and this is why you want to sponsor things on your own. This is why you don't want to take a check from everybody. This is why we don't allow corporate sponsors of these big corporations to come sponsor our convention. We don't want any political party to sponsor our convention because during the pandemic, we were able to do something that most of your Black conferences can't do. NAACP can't do it. Urban League can't do this. Most Black media outlets can't do this. What we did was we had people on a panel that were in favor of getting the shot. And we also had people on the panel who were against the shot. So we didn't discriminate as long as you're Black first. And so we allowed them to debate. I said, I think it's so strange, Dr. Parks, when I was talking to her today, we did an interview today on Dr. Boyce TV. I said, I think it's crazy that people won't even debate you. It's just so weird to me that they don't, that they won't even, that they won't even like sit down and actually talk over facts with you. And so, so the biggest thing that I would say is that when you're talking about, some of these conversations, I don't think that they're fair conversations. I don't think that they're honest conversations. I think that that there's a truth out there, and my wife and I like Dr. Parks because she brings the truth. Okay, all right. So anyway, so there you go. So there's a couple of resources that we've put in place. Three things I'll mention. Number one would be blaggenuf.com, BLAGGENUF. That's how you spell it. Let me type it in here for those of you that want to join, and you fill out the questions and make sure you answer the questions with at least a couple sentences that make sense. Because if you just type one word or just type yes, yes, yes or something, you won't get in because they want to make sure that people are there that really want to be there. The cool thing is that you can actually connect and network with people that people that live in your area. You can hit a button and it'll tell you all the people that live within 20 miles of your house. So that's a pretty cool feature that you don't really get off of platforms like Facebook and stuff like that. The other thing is Dr. Parks, if you're interested in learning from Dr. Parks or seeing what she has going on, you can go to blackhealthsecrets.com. In fact, but if you go there, don't sign up for anything. She starts on the 21st. We're going to do a 48% off discount in the next few days. So if you want to receive access to that discount, just make sure you get on one of our email lists. And you can do that by, if you go to boycewatkins.com, you get a free copy of the $5 a day investing plan. That'll give you access to the email list. So you get an email when we do that discount. So don't sign up today. just wait a couple of days and get a discount. The third thing is the All Black National Convention is happening October 20th through the 22nd in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you'd like to join us at the convention, just go to allblacknationalconvention.com. Somebody type that in, please. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. Okay, now that I've got a lot of that out, I want to say hello to everybody that's in here. And you guys can hear me okay, right? Am I coming through all right? Let me know if you can hear me. Let's see, I see Ryan Jackson, Kay Ferguson, good to see you. Let's see, Deborah Rochelle from New Orleans, Mr. Jan Jasmine, Maurice Harrell from Sarasota. Let's see, I see Wendy from Fort Lauderdale. Dorothy, how you doing, Dorothy, out of Oakland? Good to see you, Oakland. Woo, I bet it's expensive out there. Jimmy Whitley, B1 Philadelphia. Veronica, B1 Los Angeles. Actually, speaking of places like Oakland, Los Angeles, and stuff like that, I put something up on my Twitter that you may want to take a look at that was actually a chart of how rent has risen relative to wages. It's kind of crazy just how over time, the cost of just rent alone, but other things have just kind of skyrocketed and wages have remained flat. And we've talked about this. And this is one of the reasons why being an investor in something is so important, because investors benefit with inflation. I was watching something where they were just discussing real estate investment trusts. And one thing about real estate investment trusts, for example, is that when you own real estate or you own stock, your wealth tends to go up with inflation. Whereas if you're just a worker and you're not just a worker, workers work the hardest in this country. We know this, right? So you deserve the best. So don't assume, I'm not making fun of anybody that has a regular job or anything. We don't do that type of stuff. But if you're a worker and you don't have investments, then your wages stay flat and inflation goes up. And I put that on my Twitter. My Twitter is Dr. Boyce Watkins, Dr. Boyce Watkins, and the number 1. So you can feel free to follow me at Twitter. Just put the number 1 after Dr. Boyce Watkins. And I put that there. And then there's another thing I put up there in terms of just Black wealth and Black health. There was another chart I saw that described the number of drug overdoses and how drug overdoses have just gone crazy in the last a couple of decades. This fentanyl thing is insane. I know a young lady I mentor who had to take her sister to rehab a couple of days ago. I know another woman who put her son in rehab about 5 days ago. I had a cousin who died from a drug overdose a week and a half ago. So I don't know if this is just my world or if other people are being affected by drugs at that level. And it's very alarming that you have a couple things. Back in the day, I don't know about y'all, but back in the day, I remember when you had the dope man and you had the drug dealer in the hood, maybe, who was getting supplied by the person who was bringing it on a boat from another country. You had that. But now you have Big Pharma that became the biggest dope dealer in America. And they weren't just making a few $100s or a few $1,000s. They're making billions. And then you had and then on top of that, then the marketing campaigns came from mostly the hip hop music industry. Rappers, unfortunately, for whatever reason, started rapping about drugs as if that's a good thing. So now you got a lot of our young people that are on dope. One of my friends is a really smart lady, very nice mom. She was a single mom, and her son, when her and her husband got a divorce, her son was about 12 years old. And I knew this kid. He was a very sweet kid, and his father moved out. And I tell you guys how important the father is for maintaining the family structure. Well, for whatever reason, the father was gone and the relationship broke down. Well, he ended up getting hooked on heroin by the age of 16. True story. This is real life. This is real life we talk about here. And then it got so bad that his mother had to hide from him. She could not tell her own son where she lived because she was so afraid of her son robbing her. And so ultimately, this kind of thing is happening. This kind of thing is real. I don't know why other people aren't talking about it, but I'm going to talk about it. Let me know if y'all can hear me okay, because it looks like in the Zoom, I'm almost seeing like a freeze here. Can you guys hear? Give me a guess if you can hear me, if I'm coming through all right, because I'm not. Okay, there we go. I wasn't seeing much movement there. I was making sure I'm coming through all right. All right. Yeah. So long story short, this is something that we have to address and kind of deal with. And one of the things I also have to mention too is, we created the Black Enough platform because we're just not interested in all the chaos. I was on an airplane coming back from LA because, we did our Black Wealth training camp last week. And thanks to those of you that came out. I know some of you are in here right now. And on my way back, I was scrolling. I called my wife. I said, you know what? My wife's a therapist, right? So I'm kind of lucky. I love her. And she's gorgeous and she's a therapist and she's smart. Shout out to all the smart, hardworking Black women out here. Brothers, don't be intimidated by this. These women can be amazing assets in your life. So go find you one. Anyway, so I called her and I said, You're a therapist. I said, I'm kind of depressed right now. And she said, why are you depressed? I said, because I was scrolling through YouTube and I was stunned by how many platforms I saw from from all of the black men. It was a lot. There were women doing it too, so it's not just the men, but black men like between say 35 and 55 who were fighting with each other, who were just, has anybody else noticed that? Like just kind of dramatic, chatty patty, gossiping about each other, going to war with each other, attacking, discrediting, just going at, back and forth. Now, of course, my name's been thrown in there sometimes, but I don't care. I've been in the internet streets for a long time, and that's what happens. I've been doing stuff 15 years. So eventually, you can't discredit my PhD. Like I had my PhD for 20 years. I've taught at 5 major universities. So I don't care. I don't watch any of the videos that people do. I know my name is out there. And when your name is out there, people can make money by putting your name in a video and it'll get 80,000 views. And I'll be like, wow, I didn't even know that many people cared about me like that, but whatever. But still, I saw it just happening with other people. I mean, it's just, and I realized, I said, okay, I get it now. And this is where I come in as a finance guy. I understand what's going on. There's an economic incentive for people to engage in digital warfare. Because anybody knows, I want you to pay attention. I want you to notice how many videos you see that are attack videos, like, you're a dirtbag, you're a scammer, or I'm shooting back at so-and-so, whatever. Look at the number of views that they get. And remember, when they get a lot of views, they're making money. It's like a TV network. Why do you think they have such horrible reality TV? Where they will take completely dysfunctional people, like there's a lady named Krishan and Blueface. They're literally 2 people that need therapy. And if you're old enough, you remember, they're like kind of the new Bobby and Whitney. That's what they are, the new Bobby Whitney. Too. It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Krishan it has one big tooth missing, and she calls her body bruh, and she was smoking weed while she was pregnant, and there were people watching and saying that that's okay to smoke weed while you got a baby that's 8 months old in your stomach, right? And Blueface, the first time I heard about Blueface was when I saw something where he said he'd had sex with 3,000 women. And I said, that's insane, because he's 22, 23 years old at the time. And that means that he's a walking CDC alert. He's literally a super spreader at that point. 3,000 women, that's a lot of women. That's a health issue. That's a problem, right? And Dr. Francis Cress-Welsing talked about how media hypnotizes Black people into buffoonery and obsessing over sex. She said that's what media does. And she didn't even see all this. Remember, Dr. Welsing died a few years ago. So she didn't see what we're seeing. But when we see what we're seeing, we know that this is similar to what she said when she saw what she saw. Right. And in fact, I want to actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I want to bring Dr. Cress-Welsing into the room. I should bring her spirit in here because I want to read her quote to you. And we're going to get to Dr. Claude Anderson's book. His book is The Black History Reader. You can get a copy at powernomics.com. That's what we're reading from today. But I want to read this to you because these are things that have just been on my mind as I kind of share things as they sort of float through my brain. So I'm looking here, and the quote from let me see if I can scroll down on my Twitter. My Twitter is Dr. Boyce Watkins 1, if you want to find it there, but I want to read it to you because I think it's really important to sort of reflect on what she said. So come on, where is it? I'm scrolling. Come on. It's gotta be up here. Come on. Okay, I'm gonna scroll for a couple more minutes. If I don't find it, then I'm just going to have to summarize it. I put it on my Instagram too. My Instagram is Dr. Boyce Finance, Dr. Boyce Finance. Okay, you know what? I cannot find it. Apparently, I have so much stuff up here that I can't. Let's see. Okay, come on. I thought I saw it. All right, here we go. Boom! I found it. Yes. Okay. I guess if you don't give up, eventually you have success. All right. So all right. So let's see here. All right. So here is what Dr. Francis Cress-Welsing said. She says, "Our people." I'm not going to say that word because I sometimes I'll get in case you want to know why my Facebook page and my Instagram page went down, it was because I was reading from Dr. Claude Anderson's books. And I think that when I talk about our people, I'm going to start saying our people because when I use the B word too much, they think that I'm bullying and harassing Black people. I kid you not. Like literally that's what the assumption was, because according to their terms of service, you can't single out any particular group of people, or they call that racism. So basically what we're probably going to do at some point is we're going to move a lot of our of our weekly book club meetings over to the Black Enough platform and into a Zoom so that we don't have to deal with this kind of nonsense. But anyway, it says here, she says, Black people are, see, there I did it again, are being programmed through the media and television to really just focus on clowning and buffoonery, and to be obsessed with sexual activity and not thinking, and not think, singing, dancing, and being obsessed with sex. This is diverting attention away from what's really going on. And I think if you throw drugs in there too, just, rappers promoting drugs, which is the most insane thing I've ever seen. This is what you're dealing with. This is what you're seeing, right? And this is also another reason why controlling the control of Black wealth and the control of Black media is so important, because if we have our own media outlets and we have our own wealth, then you can walk away from it all, and you can also have your spaces where your ideas are sort of presented more prominently than the ideas of those who don't have your back, who are not in support of you. All right. So anyway, so let me get started on reading from Dr. Anderson's book, but I like to frame the conversation based on the stuff that's kind of going on in the world at that moment and the things that I'm kind of thinking about. So let's I'm going to go to page 15, and this book is called The Black History Reader. It's by Dr. Claude Anderson. It is on powernomics.com. That's his website. And I'm going to skip. You know what? Yeah, let's jump into Dr. Martin Luther King. This question is, did Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s colorblind dream take the focus off Black rights? So I'm going to skip actually question number 4, which was the history of diversity. Where did diversity programs come from? I'll come back to that a little bit later. But today I want to talk about the Dr. King thing. So here's what Dr. Anderson says. He says, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s principle of colorblindness diverted Blacks from prioritizing their own group self-interest and guided them backward to being altruistic, thinking first of others. So what Dr. Anderson is saying is that instead of being Black first, you were taught to be white first, Asian first, whatever first, but Black last, right? So he's claiming that Dr. Anderson, he's claiming that a mistake of Dr. King was honoring everyone above yourself. His shift from Black to colorblindness reversed the long fight of Black leaders to draw a singular focus to their own group. In that respect, Dr. King's altruism took Blacks back to the way they had to think when they were slaves. Wow. When the Civil War and slavery ended in the 1870s, Black ex-slaves had an opportunity for something they had long prayed for, a chance to place their own group self-interest first. For centuries, they were denied the right to have personal or Black group self-interest. The sole focus of a slave's life was to care for the master, his interests, and to view the world through the master's eyes only. During slavery, some Blacks did fight for Black rights. The strength of their advocacy varied from the extremely aggressive efforts of Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, to milder advocates like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and Booker T. Washington. After slavery ended, Black activists hoped they would be able to direct their energies and resources to benefit their own people. However, that was not to be. The Civil War ended in 1865. Reconstruction lasted about 10 years, ending about 1875. As that period ended, the dominant white society issued laws and public policies that socioeconomically bridled Black group self-interest. They were limited in the kinds of businesses and schools they could operate. Black candidates for public office were instructed to speak in generalities. They could not speak out in the interest of Blacks or hold whites accountable for past injustices. Around 1915, a pro-Blackness period finally did emerge and lasted for a full generation. W.E.B. Du Bois began advocating Black-based politics. Marcus Garvey advocated for Black economics. Carter G. Woodson emphasized Black education. Elijah Muhammad organized the Black Muslims, and Black entertainers and artists pushed Blackness through the Harlem Renaissance. The increased focus on Blackness resulted in the rise of Black leaders, who in 1928 petitioned the federal government to codify the Black self-interest by passing a Negro Bill of Rights. Wow. Did y'all know that? How many of y'all knew that? This is page 16 of The Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson. Powernomics.com, so we can get a copy. Everybody should get a copy of his book. Did y'all know that there was a Negro Bill of Rights in 1928? How many of y'all knew that? Give me a yes or no. How many of y'all knew? Have y'all ever heard of the Negro Bill of Rights? Yes or no? I'd be curious. I have never heard of this. Okay, Monica says yes. Ryan says no. This is why we're reading out loud, because we're learning. Don't assume that I'm reading this because I already know everything. I do not know everything. Some of this stuff I'm learning right along with y'all. That's why I love Dr. Anderson, because we need a real history teacher, not this crap they teach in public school. I don't care if they have critical race theory or not. I don't think that's adequate. I think that we need honest race theory. All right, so 1928, they wanted to pass a Negro Bill of Rights. Their intent was to recognize and focus public attention to relieving the historical legacies that kept blacks fixed at the lowest rung of society's social hierarchy. Crazy. We're 100 years later, and we're still on the lowest rung of America's social hierarchy 100 years later. In the late 1950s, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a 28-year-old black preacher, burst into the nation's consciousness and became the leader of the civil rights movement, which was focused singularly on black issues at the time. As time went on, however, the movement lost focus. Dr. King was the first black leader to convert black problems into a broad category of minority issues, which included gender, ethnicity, language, religion, handicap status, and poverty classes. And this is interesting. So what Dr. Anderson's saying here to this point is that part of the critique you could lay on Dr. King is that he started forming this super broad coalition. And I'm sure the super broad coalition may have included some liberal allies. Now he wasn't loved then like he's loved now. You know, a lot of surveys showed that back at that time, most Americans did not really appreciate Dr. King or what he was trying to do. I've always appreciated him as a human being, as a scholar. I have a lot of respect for his father. His father was a great man and a very strong man. People don't talk about his father. They also don't talk about the sacrifice that his family made. In case you don't know, his mother was killed in church in Atlanta, just randomly, and his brother was killed right after he died. His brother died in mysteriously. He was a good swimmer, but he drowned in my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. A lot of y'all don't know that. I don't know why they don't talk about that. So his family paid a huge sacrifice, just like Malcolm's family paid a huge sacrifice, you know, with what happened to his father and a lot of his father's brothers and things like that. So effectively, and then his mother, we know about Malcolm's mother as well, eventually going to being committed to an insane asylum, things like that. So these leaders pay a huge price, right? They really, really paid a price that is greater than any price that any of us have ever had to pay. So they deserve to be respected for that. But one of the areas that we could critique Dr. King, and I'm going to critique him as his mentor, because remember, Dr. King died at 39. I'm 52. I'm 13 years older than him, just like I'm 12 years older than my brother. So if I were his mentor talking to him right now, one of the things I would say is that a mistake that appears to have been made, possibly, again, this is me just talking, so don't assume I believe that I'm right about everything. But I believe that Dr. King fell for what I call the flaw of coalition building. Sometimes you want to have the biggest group without having the highest quality group. Sometimes you go for quantity over quality. Do you understand? See, in politics, numbers is everything. That's what we think. We think when we do politics without economics and we're counting the number of votes, we say, okay, I want to build the biggest coalition I can possibly build. The same thing happens with fame. There are people that get credit as being leaders in the community and successful black people just because they have a big following, just because they have a big audience, just because they have 10 million fans instead of 1 million. But the question I ask then is, you know, what's the quality of that audience? What's the quality of the fans? You know, I stand in the position of, say, Louis Farrakhan. I remember Farrakhan said one time that he said, I don't need everybody. I just need about 10,000 good, strong men, and I can go conquer the world. I can go do what we got to do. Right now, I'm the same way. I don't want to be in an alliance with everybody. I know that when you have a smaller group, there's more weight on the group. You have the strongest that have to carry a chunk of the load. I'm looking for intelligent black people. You notice every time I do a podcast, I say this is the home for intelligent black people. I didn't say this is the home for all black people. I didn't say this is the home for everybody. I didn't say this is the home for anybody that wants to come in. I'm not trying to make everybody comfortable. I deliberately, specifically make certain people uncomfortable so that they'll walk away because they need to identify that this is not for you. You're not ready to really kind of do the work that I think that we need to do in order to produce the next generation of builders. No disrespect to them, but it sort of says either you're going to shape up or you're going to ship out. If you go knock on the door at West Point, they want more soldiers for sure, but everybody can't qualify for West Point. You go to Harvard University, sure, maybe they want more students, they want more money. They have a $40 billion endowment. It's probably $50 billion by now, but they don't want everybody going to Harvard. You know, so has to be a point where your movement can't just be about the numbers. That's the point. You get what I'm saying? You can't just focus on building the biggest coalition. You have to look at the quality of the coalition, Remember, Kim Kardashian, I think, has over 100 million followers, but about 30 million of those followers are bots. About another 30 million are brainless people that don't really care about anything except what color her outfit is that day, right? So when Kim shows up and says, hey, I'm a lawyer and I want to do social justice, about 80% of that audience is like, I don't even understand what you're talking about. I don't even care. I don't even care. Right. And so the numbers are not the most important factor. You have to look at the quality. Same thing is true when you're building a business. Don't just look at the number of people that know about your product. Look at the quality of people. If you're selling a luxury brand, if you have a luxury Tiffany or Gucci or something, Gucci does not want everybody up in the Gucci store. So in my mind, I see the movement of intelligent Black people as kind of being, to being the luxury brand of Black movements. Doesn't mean we look down on anybody. I don't believe in any of that, but it means that that you guys are committed. You guys are the super soldiers. You're the ones that are going to move the community forward in the next generation. That just right by virtue of that fact, by virtue of the fact that you're training yourself to be an independent thinker, that right there eliminates at least 70% of the rest of the community, because studies show that 70% of all people are incapable of thinking for themselves on a consistent basis. 70% of all people, maybe because they're afraid, maybe because they're too busy to think it through, maybe they just don't want to think, it makes their head hurt. I don't know, but 70%, that's why in every election, if you're ever confused and angry and frustrated, that it seems like people just kind of do the same thing over and over and over again. Like, why would they keep voting for this person? Look at what this person has done. Like this part, they've done nothing for them. Well, that's because 70% of the population can't even really do what they're supposed to do. They follow authority, and that's what they lean on, right? So Dr. King, I think that was a mistake that he made, in my opinion. Is yeah, he had a big coalition, he had a big following, but there wasn't a lot of quality there across the board. There was a lot of quantity, and that ended up distracting him from his purpose, right? So if I suddenly became Boyce Watkins, who had 10 million, 100 million people following me all over the internet, and I start catering to all that, all those diverse interests, I can't be what I am. I can't be Black first and pushing for intelligent Black people, because that's a niche on top of a niche on top of a niche. Okay, so that's the first thing that I see here that really, I think, ended up hurting what Dr. King was able to do, in my view. Now, fortunately, though, remember, as he got closer to death, he started noticing things. You guys caught the quote about integrating into a burning house. He said, I don't know if, he learned that this whole like getting closer to white folks thing isn't necessarily the best move for him. That wasn't going to be the best move for the community. Also, he started talking about money. He started talking about the economics. He started talking about the civil rights. And again, I believe that if Dr. King had continued to live, had been around another 10 years, he'd be right here where we are. I don't think that what we're saying is different from what Dr. King would have said. It's very different from what he did say, because he had not had time to evolve his thinking to the point where you throw out the fake dream and build the real dream. I think that his dream was one that wasn't the best dream that he could have had. And a lot of us go through that. When I was 38, 35, 32, my dreams were very different from what my dreams are now, because I've seen more. Okay, I understand the real from the fake a little bit more than I did before. And I'm sure that when I'm 72, my dreams will be different at 72 than they are at 52. So everybody evolves. We all evolve. We all grow. That's the part of life. That's the game of life. All right. So Thomas E. Woods Jr. By the way, we're reading Dr. Claude Anderson's book, The Black History Reader. We're on page 17. You can go to powernomics.com to take a look at the book. By the way, those of you that are listening that are not inside the Zoom, I want you guys to know, I'm going to copy the link for you to join us inside the Zoom, and I'm going to put this in the chat, and I'm going to pin it to the top. Join us in the Zoom, because I'm actually going to have to shut off the YouTube version of the broadcast, because YouTube and Instagram, stuff like that, they give me problems when I read from Dr. Anderson's books. That's how I lost my big Instagram page, the one that had 430,000 followers. In case you want to know, when Facebook cuts you off or Instagram cuts you off, they don't respond to emails or anything. So we just lost it, but whatever. But now we're on Blag Enough. And in case you just came in, Blag Enough is spelled BLAGGENUF. And that's a platform you have to apply to get in, because we don't want anybody disrupting what we're trying to do. We don't want any stupid conversations. We want good people who are being good to each other, who are trying to build, trying to grow, trying to be productive. So that's spelled BLAGGENUF.com if you'd like to join that, and fill out the quick little questionnaires, about 3 questions that'll let us decide to let you in. And also, I put the link to that Zoom, to the Zoom for the book club in the chat if you're on YouTube. So if you hit that link, you can join us. I'm going to shut that off in a couple of minutes. So I just want to let you guys know. All right. So let me keep reading here. Dr. Anderson says on page 17, Thomas E. Woods Jr. in his book, 33 Questions About American History, pointed out and discussed how Dr. King proposed that the nation institute a Bill of Rights for the disadvantaged, not a Bill of Rights for Black Americans. The term disadvantaged became synonymous with minority and equated government-instituted slavery to contemporary issues such as poverty, gender, and immigration. Interesting. So Dr. King proposed that the nation's Bill of Rights for the advantaged, not a Bill of Rights for Black Americans. Okay, so he's claiming that Dr. King was basically leaning toward sort of creating that broad coalition we talked about. Interesting. Instead of framing the focus of his work to long-suffering Black Americans, Dr. King's euphemism of disadvantaged opened the door to a myriad of ambiguous groups that made the case that they too had suffered institutional mistreatment, deprivation, and exploitation. Dr. King's actions started Black America down the slippery slope of competition with fabricated minority issues in 1960 when he said, quote, "We're going to take this movement and reach out to the poor in all directions in this country, into the Southeast, after the Native Americans, into the West, after the Chicanos, into Appalachia for poor whites, and into the ghettos after the Negroes and Puerto Ricans. And we are going to bring them together and enlarge this campaign into something bigger than just a civil rights movement for Negroes." Did y'all know? Have you ever heard that quote? This is interesting. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with what Dr. King was trying to do. But I think that what this shows is that what he was trying to do is different from what we're trying to do. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I mean, let's just be clear. What Dr. King appeared to end up doing inadvertently, probably because he was, he may have been sensitive to the criticism that he gets, because when you do things that are Black first, you're going to get criticized. I don't know if anybody's ever been called anybody, how many of y'all, give me a yes or no, how many of y'all been called a racist for being pro-Black? Anybody ever run into people that think that because you love Black people, you must hate everybody else, or you're trying to discriminate? And they don't understand most Black people I know aren't really built like that. Like I'm not built that way. I'm just going to tell you right now. I'm not. If you're looking for somebody who's going to hate everybody, I don't. Hate is just not a good energy. I'm not competing for Dave Chappelle's Player Hater of the Year. I'm not sitting around, I hate you, I hate you, I hate this, I hate that. I don't do that. I don't need hate. I got love. When you got love drowns out hate. Hate is fire, love is water. If you have enough water, you put out any fire. So my goal is to love you, is to love myself, and to love the good energy around me. I even love the people who may not love me. I just might have to love them from a distance. So love is always more powerful than hate. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. And I mean that literally, because love is what brings human beings together to make babies. And that means that love is what allows us to even live, right? So love is all we need. You don't really need hate. You don't need to hate anybody. But what it seems to occur is that because Dr. King may have gotten the unfair criticism that, advocating for Black people means he must hate everybody else, or he's discriminating against other people. Maybe he was sensitive to that and said, no, we're here for everybody. Because I've seen that and I understand that, because I remember feeling that way 20 years ago when I was at Syracuse University and I spoke in a pro-Black way, and I started getting trouble, static from my university because they didn't really like that kind of stuff. I started saying, no, this is for everybody. This is for poor people. This is for all the disenfranchised. The problem with that, here's the problem with that move. This is where Dr. King, I believe, strategically made an error. Dr. King, by advocating for sort of a broad-based program that says, okay, no, this isn't just for Black people. This is for anybody who's disadvantaged in America. He dropped one battle and went after another battle. He dropped the battle against racism, and he then entered into a battle against capitalism. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, so fighting against anti-Blackness is one thing. That's an arena that's about, think of it like a football stadium. That's a football stadium that seats 50,000 people. But fighting the battle against capitalism is an arena that holds 2.5 million, right? Like capitalism is a beast in America that is going to be extremely difficult to defeat. If that's what you're even trying to do in the first place, then that means that you're spilling over into the space of communism, Marxism, maybe anarchist ideology. some of those ideas, they have good ideas over there, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. I think there are so many great ideas in socialism. I told you guys I went to Europe, and they have a lot of socialist principles there, and it was a very peaceful society. I didn't see hardly any homeless people. I didn't see fat people. I didn't see, hear gunshots everywhere, right? All this happens, a lot of this happens in America because we know that we're selling everybody drugs and selling everybody a gun and not educating the kids, that allows corporations to make more money. So capitalism is something that should be criticized extensively, as I do myself, right? So even as I tell you guys, build businesses and build wealth, I'm saying I want you to do it more like O.W. Gurley in Black Wall Street, where he knew he could make his money without starving the community. He knew he could do well while everyone did well. So he created systems and incentives for those who are doing well to help others get opportunities to do well, right? So that's more of a model that we should have, and that's not a purely capitalist model, because pure capitalism is a little bit exploitative in its core. So Dr. King, though, by fighting the battle against capitalism, it's just a whole different battle. You're going into this country where capitalism is the religion. It's money becomes the drug, and you're fighting against 300 million junkies that don't want to see you succeed. So Dr. King, I believe. So on one hand, if you're fighting a bigger battle, you're likely to get better weapons, right? So when you allow, and I do believe this is one thing that doesn't get discussed, but I do believe this is true. I believe that a lot of movements that appeared to be Black movements eventually became very leftist, socialist, communist, Marxist movements. That's why in the Black Panther Party, they call each other comrades, stuff like that. That's language that might be used in the communist space. Nothing against that, nothing against those ideas. I'm just sort of telling it like it is. So I think that what occurs is that there are people that come along and say, no, your problem isn't racism. Your problem is capitalism. Has anybody ever heard that? Has anybody ever thought deeply enough on this topic or seen this? This is what people do. This is what some people, they'll say, no. The problem is we need to bring down the whole system. We need to bring down the corporations. We need to bring down the whole government. And some Black folks aren't into that. Some Black folks are like, no, I'm not trying to burn everything down. I just want to make sure I get treated fairly. Again, I'm not telling you what side you have to be on. I'm not advocating that for you to be capitalist or non-capitalist or Marxist or so. Be whatever you want. Explore all the ideas. Find the ones that work for you. What I'm saying to you is this is what I saw. So what happened was similar to Black Lives Matter. Do y'all remember when Black Lives Matter came out? A lot of you were very supportive of Black Lives Matter. You're like, yeah, that's it. Yeah, Black lives do matter. Yeah. Then you started seeing all this other stuff. Right, you went through their page. You're like, wait a minute, they're talking about like where are they bringing in gay and trans and like it just got kind of weird. And people were like, wait, what is all this? What is all this extra stuff that you're adding in here? Well, that's what happens, right? So here's the thing. And again, I'm not an expert on this, but this is what I see. When you start forming coalitions and you fight bigger battles, like you go from fighting the battle against anti-Black racism to fighting the bigger battle of against capitalism. You're going to get more weapons. You're going to have a bigger army, but you also have a bigger battle to fight. Let me give you an example. This is what my father was in the Vietnam War. Shout out to all the veterans in here. God bless all of you. And by the way, everybody who's watching on YouTube, I'm going to shut the YouTube down in a second. There's a link up there where you can join the Zoom. So you can hit that link at the top if you'd like to join us inside the Zoom. I'm going to have to shut this down because I don't want us to get in trouble on YouTube for talking about sensitive issues like this. My father fought in the Vietnam War. And I love my daddy. My daddy took care of me since I was 3. My biological father was not in my life. A lot of you know the story, but I have to repeat it because I want to give a shout out to all the parents that are taking care of kids that are not their own. But the Vietnam War it took a huge toll on him psychologically. I mean, mentally, he was traumatized. He talks about being pushed out of the airplane when he was 17 years old because he didn't want to jump. He talks about sleeping in a ditch and hearing mortar fire going off all night and just how terrible that was. And it's affected him to this day. So in order to understand my father better, I watched this documentary on Netflix about the Vietnam War. I do not remember what it was called, but I watched this documentary. It was maybe 12 hours long, and I watched it like 3 or 4 times. I don't know why. I just got hypnotized. It was like when my mother said I used to do that with football. When I was 2, she said she would put me in front of the TV and I start watching a football game and I would just watch football all day long. So that like, now don't judge my mama for using the TV as a babysitter, but she was a teen mother, so she didn't know no better. Anyway, and in this war, because I was like, where did this war come from? How did it start? What happened here? So I learned about this guy named Ho Chi Minh. And some of you that are history experts, you probably know all this stuff. So forgive me if I'm saying something you already know, or if I say something wrong. But Ho Chi Minh was kind of the leader. He was a great leader in Vietnam. He was kind of in Vietnam, sort of what a Malcolm or a Martin would have been in the Black community. They loved him. They looked up to him. They respected him. He'd go places, and people would, have him kiss their babies, kind of like when Minister Farrakhan goes places. He reminded me a little bit of Minister Farrakhan in that sense of having that presence. Well, Ho Chi Minh was instrumental because the Vietnam before the Vietnam War had been under the control of the French, and he had been fighting to liberate his country, his homeland, his people from the occupation of the French, because they did what the European thing did. They go places and just take stuff and control stuff, right? So here's where I'm getting at. And I promise you, this is all going to add up. So Ho Chi Minh was trying to get the support he needed to fight against the occupation of his country. He was trying to liberate his people. That was his goal. So he tried to go to the United States after World War I. They ignored him. They blew him off. So then he goes to the Soviets, and the Soviets give him the backing that he needs to fight the occupiers out of his country. But the problem is that when you take on a bigger alliance, when you take on a bigger coalition, it's like joining a gang. Now, you've got more support, but now their enemies also become your enemies. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, if I decide, okay, you know what, I need more protection, I'm gonna join the Crips. Well, now that means every time I see a blood, I gotta fight the blood, even though I don't even know the guy, right? But they're like, no, you're a Crip, you gotta fight the blood, right? You know what I mean? Like that's what it was. So let me turn this off. Sorry, guys, my TV. I think my TV heard me yelling and it started talking back to me. So ultimately, what occurred was that Ho Chi Minh, by aligning himself with the Soviets, became a natural enemy of the United States. Do you follow me? Do you follow what I'm saying? Give me a yes if you're following what I'm saying here. And this is what I'm talking about with Dr. King. By Dr. King taking support from other groups and aligning himself with, campaigns for disabled and poor and everybody who's being victimized by capitalism, he got more allies. He formed a bigger coalition, but now he ended up fighting a bigger war. And the problem with fighting the bigger war is that your energy gets diluted, the size of your adversary grows tenfold, and then also your original cause ends up becoming collateral damage. So here's what happened with Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh decides, we want to liberate Vietnam, so we're going to align ourselves with the Soviets because they got weapons and missiles and tanks and planes and guns and all the things that we need. Well, then suddenly, now that you're aligned with the Soviets it's the middle of the Cold War, you now are an enemy of the United States. Now the U.S. is coming for that ass. They're coming. They're like, you down with them? Okay, so we're going to come get you. So you know what happens? Check this out. The United States ends up dropping more bombs on Vietnam than were dropped on every single country by every single country in all of World War II combined. And if you've ever seen Vietnam on a map, you'll see it's a very tiny country. Imagine they dropped more bombs on Vietnam in those few years that we were there than were dropped by every country on every other country in all of World War II combined. Tens of millions of people died in World War II, by the way. Like, the 6 million people from the Jewish community. And then beyond that, there were millions more that died in World War II. But so imagine all this compacted into one country. So here's what I'm saying. So by sort of doing this tactic to think that he's sort of liberating Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh inadvertently, you might argue, ended up destroying Vietnam. So maybe with Dr. King, the analogy would be that by him sort of trying to broaden the coalition to maybe perhaps do what's best for Black people, he ended up doing something that wasn't beneficial to Black people. Because you're bringing all these bigger parties with bigger interests in the room, and they start pushing Black people to the back of the bus, which gets you right back where you started with the same oppression, where it's not Black first anymore, it's now Black last. Well, if I'm going to be in the back of the bus over here, and you telling me I can go over there and be in the back of the bus, then one situation isn't any different from the other. That's why to this day, you don't feel any more empowered as a Black person if you are a conservative than if you're a liberal. If you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're still pushed to the back of the bus. Why is that? Well, because you don't understand the nature of power. And we haven't accepted the true price of what liberation actually looks like, what freedom actually looks like. And Malcolm X used to say the price of freedom is death. I don't think we have to necessarily pay that price, although that, it is important to kind of accept the idea of this. I'd be okay dying tomorrow for what I believe in. Seriously, if I died tomorrow, I wouldn't be sad and say, oh man, it was fun. Right. So, but I hope it doesn't get to that point. But the point of the matter is to say that when you're talking about liberating, and we're talking about, say, the Black First movement compared to what Dr. King was seeking to do with this broad-based coalition that included everybody. I don't want a coalition that includes everybody. I don't want 10 million allies. I don't want 10 million people's interests sort of diluting our interests, because the thing about it in America, unfortunately, is that even if you go back and you look at surveys of people after the Civil War was over, you'll find that the people in the South didn't like us and the people in the North didn't like us. The people in the North wanted us to be liberated, kind of like with the immigration thing, right? The people in the North, they theoretically kind of want the immigrants to get into the country, but they don't want the immigrants living in their cities, right? This is why the whole sanctuary city conversation is so funny to watch, because they're saying, oh, you're a sanctuary city? Okay, we're going to just bus everybody to the sanctuary city. We're going to send them all to Chicago. We're going to send them all to New York, and we're going to send them all to LA, San Francisco, and y'all just deal with that since that's what you want, and you put some skin in the game. You about that life? Okay, cool. Here's 100,000 new people. You go find a place for them. You find jobs for them. You share resources with them. And what's happening right now? Has anybody been following that? Anybody been following what's been going on? It's become complete chaos. It's because Democrats are fighting Democrats now. The mayor of New York was fighting with the governor of New York and figure out who to blame for what's going on in New York. So the same thing that's happening then was similar to what was happening after slavery. They were like, okay, so you're saying you want all these slaves to be free. Cool. We're going to send them to Boston to look for union jobs. And then next thing you know, Black people are getting attacked and beat up in some of these northern cities because we're coming to take the resources. So you don't really have a lot of natural allies. And my argument would be that any group that doesn't have a lot of natural allies should go ahead and aim for quality over quantity. Quality over quantity. I'm going to go ahead and give, and by the way, if you're on YouTube, I'm about to shut the YouTube down in 2 minutes. So the link to join the Zoom is right there at the top. So go ahead and click on that link, join us in the Zoom, because I'm going to have to shut down on YouTube because I don't want to get in trouble on YouTube. But the interesting thing I think about the Jewish community and how masterfully they were able to accumulate a tremendous amount of power by using the power of economics. The Jewish community, I have all the students in the Black Business School read An Empire of Their Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood, not as in any sort of anti-Semitic form at all, but reading it in terms of a blueprint of understanding how they use their commitment to economic training and economic unity and economic intelligence to really scale themselves up, to make themselves bigger, to multiply themselves, right? Because they understand something about America that a lot of us still don't get. You don't really live in a democracy. You live in a capitalist society that pretends to be a democracy. The votes don't move the politicians. It's the money that moves the politicians, because the money is what is used to buy the votes. Raphael Warnock out of Georgia, he might be a good guy. I don't know. But he had to raise, $250 million or something in order to run. Well, you think Black people gave him that money? Black people ain't got we can't raise $250 million. Right? We have a hard time raising $10 million. So whoever raised that $250 million for him, those are the people that he's going to represent when he goes to Capitol Hill, because if he does not, they're not going to give him money to run for re-election, right? So effectively, instead of taking strategies that don't work, like thinking that if we vote for the right people, everything's going to get better, I think a better strategy is house by house, family by family. We say, okay, what's our economic strategy to achieve power? Achieving power is a two-step process, in my opinion. First, you play defense, and then if you want to, you can play offense. First thing you got to do, if you're in a football game and you're losing by 10 touchdowns or something, you first thing you got to do is stop the other team from scoring on you, right? So first thing you got to do is defend your own goal. After you play good defense and you protect the ball, then you start moving the ball down the field and trying to score points. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if you achieve economic strength and independence within your family, then you're protecting the ball. You're stopping others from controlling you with their economic power. Like there's really nobody I can think of who could come into my house and buy my wife's time. Why? Well, because my wife is economically independent. You can't really buy her time. She's not going to do something she don't want to do it. You can't buy my time. I'm economically independent. Our kids, you can't buy our kids time. We can outbid you, right? But if we were struggling and we were broke, you get into those extreme situations where you go to some countries and the parents will sell their daughter because a rich man comes along and says, I want your daughter, right? With sick stuff, right? But it does happen around the world. We've seen this. R. Kelly, I think that's what was happening in a lot of R. Kelly situations, to be honest with you, right? Or both of the parents, neither parent can spend time with their kids because they all have to go to work. Somebody's basically come in and bought that parent and paid money to get them out of the house so that then the child doesn't get what they need. So the first step really in economic independence isn't so much achieving the really difficult task of controlling others with your money, right? I'm not saying you have to expand. You don't have to you don't have to control anything in anyone else's house. I'm saying do something easier. Focus on just controlling what happens in your house. Because if you can do that, then you're achieving those first steps toward independence. And that doesn't require massive coalitions. It doesn't require you showing up and doing anything for anybody and everybody who makes a promise that they're going to somehow help you and liberate you. It goes back to Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, where I think that Ho Chi Minh should have approached things with a Vietnam first kind of ideology to say, you know what? Yeah, we'd have more weapons if we aligned ourselves with the United States, but we don't want the US's problems. We don't want them digging up in the Kool-Aid. We don't want their interests to become our interests because we're not aligned enough with them to make that make sense. You understand? So really, a lot of times when you see a lot of Black civil rights organizations or a lot of your Black leaders, or especially your Black politicians, I argue that the reason they can't represent your interests is because their coalitions are so broad that they become watered down. And when you're trying to do everything for everybody, you end up doing nothing for anyone. Right? When you're trying to be everything to everybody, you become nothing to no one. Give me a guess if you understand what I'm saying. So don't dilute yourself. And, pick something that works for you. Pick something that's pure. Pick, like, even in my life, I'll tell you, it even translates to how I manage my time. If you want to know one of my greatest secrets to success in my life and the success that I had, I'm not bragging or saying I'm better than anybody, but I'm not a person who's 52 who looks back and says, oh man, I messed up and I screwed up and I did this. No. I didn't know. I didn't screw up. No, I did pretty much everything I wanted. I literally, even marrying the girl of my dreams, the woman I wanted to marry was the one I married. The money I wanted to make, I made that money. The success I wanted to have, I had that times 10 because I worked consistently. I did not waste my life, right? So I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you the truth. So, but one of the things you want to know, one of the biggest secrets to that success, it came from having an extreme consciousness of time management. It was when I was 19 years old and I was walking to the library and I realized two things that I realized in my morning walks to the library. One thing I realized was how to have emotional intelligence. I said, wait a minute, instead of me being depressed, because I had a problem with depression in high school, I was very sad in high school. I said, I think I can actually control my own mood. If I'm deliberately optimistic and intentionally positive in terms of how I view things and intentionally confident and choose confidence and choose optimism, then good things are probably going to happen. That's the first revelation I had. I've used that for the last 30 years and it's worked like a charm. The second thing I realized was that time is so important and so powerful, and time has to be managed. And the thing about time is that we waste a lot of time. And the reason we waste time is because we're not conscious of time, right? Like when people sit around and they say, man, the time sure flies. I don't know where the time went, right? A lot of times that's because you weren't thinking about it, right? You weren't conscious of it. Or if you get in a car, I flew from LA to Chicago. I'm sorry to get so deep, but I got to be honest with you and break this down. I hope this helps you. So I flew from LA to Chicago. I told my wife, I said, yeah, it was a quick trip because I went to sleep and I woke up and I was there, right? The plane was landing. And that was, and why did it seem like that 4-hour flight was only a few minutes? Well, because I was asleep. I had no consciousness. My time consciousness was gone. So when you're not conscious of something, you waste it, right? So ultimately, the best thing I did that made me very productive, and when I was in college, I had the highest grade point average of every Black student on campus, and I also took more classes than everyone else. Everyone else would take 15 credit hours. I would take like 21 or 24 credit hours because I was that much into it, because I'd never really been able to really succeed at the level I wanted in track and field and sports. So I sort of took that energy and applied it to academics, and that was my obsession, right? And my secret in that, the reason that it seemed like it was easy for me, that it seemed like it was like people like, how do you make good grades? It's so easy for you. You make straight A's and everything. It wasn't because I was smarter than everybody per se. It was more so because I became really conscious of time. I realized, wait, there's 168 hours in a week. That means I could sleep 8 hours a night, go to every party I want to, work a full-time job, and still make straight A's. There's 8,760 hours in a year. So I started budgeting my time the same way you budget money. And then on top of that, here's the other thing I learned. This is what I learned when I became more public, right? When you become more public, everyone wants to talk to you. Everyone has can I talk to you for 5 minutes? Can I talk to you for 10 minutes? I have something, right? And what I realize is that in order for me to be maximally productive, I have to pick my fortress. Right. I have to pick the space that I'm going to hold it down. I have to pick my stronghold, meaning I have a list of maybe 5 or 6 things that matter to me more than anything else in this world. It might be my family, my health, because I don't want to get fat, doing this work with you, and a couple of other things. And what I decided was, if what I'm doing with you right now does not fit into one of those 6 things, chances are I won't have time to do it. Because the only time I can give you at that point is time I have left over after I do the important stuff. And I usually don't have any time left over because my day is pretty full. I turn my phone off. I don't have ringers, dings, beeps, notifications. I don't check email hardly at all. I don't tweet or unless it's for a purpose, right? I'm very specific about that. Now, why is that important? Why am I bringing that up? Well, because this principle of sort of picking your fortress, picking your space, I think that's one of the keys to independence, right? Where you're not trying to conquer the whole world. You're not trying to control anybody else's space initially. You're just trying to pick your territory and hold it down. So if I am a man who's heading a family, my goal isn't necessarily to be Elon Musk. That's hard to do. But my goal is to hold it down in this space. I may not have no power out there. You might think I'm a nobody over there. But in this space, we are holding it down. We are intelligent. We are working hard. We are financially secure. You cannot buy us off this space. You cannot knock us off this perch. So the question I would ask you, and this is where I think Dr. King got it wrong. I think Dr. King should have picked his space and held it down, picked his people and said, you know what, I'm going to achieve in a type of independence for this particular group of Black people based on what we have. If we don't have everything we need, we're going to work with what we got. We're not going out trying to get all these broad-based coalitions. We're not trying to work with him, her, and Billy and Sally. We're going to work with people who understand this, right? So with the B1 movement, that's where I live. It's like, no, this is the platform for intelligent Black people. So that means I'm not trying to get along with no rappers unless you come in correct. I get along with a lot of rappers, but not the ones that ain't coming correct. I'm not trying to get along with people that are here for buffoonery. I'm not here to get along with people that want to be ignorant. I'm not here to get along with people that want to form weird coalitions with people that I do not understand. I don't hate any of those people. I just focus on what matters, and that allows you to establish your stronghold. Those of you that are veterans in here, by the way, a lot of veterans follow me. I noticed that years ago. I was kind of surprised by that, but now I understand why you get that, because think about this. When you go invade something, they don't say go invade the entire country all at once. They say start here, pick this little area, hold it down, pick your stronghold, and then expand from your stronghold, right? So I would encourage you, go home and figure out, what's my stronghold? Where's the place I'm gonna hold it down? What are the things that matter to me? What are my 2 or 3 core values that I'm starting every day with, and making sure that I'm solid in those areas, right? And then at that point you can expand, but don't try to be everything to everybody. Everybody ain't gonna like you. Don't try to do everything for everybody. You're gonna waste all your time and energy. Don't go out here trying to spend money and invest in everything everywhere. It ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. You don't want to be diluted. Dr. King got diluted. That's what I'm getting at. Dr. King got diluted, and that took away from his greatness. So if I'm Dr. King's mentor, he's 39, I'm 52, I sit him down right before the assassination and say, look, man, they're going to come kill you because you've got, because you're talking about money now, that makes you very dangerous. And you're talking about the Vietnam War now, that makes you really dangerous. Now the military industrial complex is going to come get you. The capitalists want to come get you, and the government wants to come get you. So that don't even count the crazy Negroes that might be out here, because some of them will come get you too. So let's talk about what where your stronghold is. Let's start there and achieve and figure out what independence and freedom really looks like, and who you're trying to achieve independence for. Because if you're trying to liberate any and everybody, that's hard to do. I don't think you can liberate every poor person in America. But I think you can liberate the Black community. I think that institution building and really studying what the Jewish community did when they sort of took their wealth and did specific things with it, I think that's our blueprint. That's our way out. That's our process. That's how you multiply yourself, is with your money. Your money, if you have a lot of dollar bills, you become more than one person. You can have a huge impact by having lots and lots of wealth that goes far beyond what one vote will ever do in a million years. All right. So anyway, all right. So everybody on YouTube, I'm going to shut the YouTube down. and I'm going to finish up reading. You can join the Zoom. The Zoom is at the top. And also, just a reminder to everybody, this book is called The Black History Reader by Dr. Claude Anderson. You can go to powernomics.com to take a look at his books. Also, don't forget the All Black National Convention is going to happen October 20th through the 22nd. So if you'd like to join us in Atlanta, then go to allblacknationalconvention.com. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. And my new book actually is called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. So if you'd like to get a copy of that, you can go to drboycebooks.com. My kids are in the other room literally shipping out books. So if you want an autograph copy, you go to drboycebooks.com, search for the word autograph, and we can send you an autograph copy, and my kids will send that to you. All right. So I'm shutting down the YouTube now.